Jake Martinez stood in the center of the massive chamber, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The walls stretched up so high that he could barely see the ceiling, and strange lights floated in the air around him like glowing butterflies. 12 enormous seats formed a circle around him, each one holding a creature that looked like it had come from humanity's wildest nightmares or strangest dreams. The Zephyrian speaker looked like a mountain of living crystal, its faceted surface catching the light and throwing rainbows across the floor. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Human Ambassador Martinez," it said, and Jake felt the words vibrate through his bones. "Your species has been called before this council to answer for your crimes against galactic order." Jake had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 3 years now, but he still felt overwhelmed by these meetings. The other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. They had rules and customs that made sense to them but seemed crazy to human minds. "What crimes are you talking about?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. He knew the answer already, but he had to ask anyway. A creature that looked like a giant squid made of pure thought floated in another seat. The Vari had no physical body that humans could see, just a shifting mass of purple energy that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, Jake heard the words inside his head rather than through his ears. "You expand too quickly, you fight wars without permission. You refuse to follow the laws that have kept peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years." Jake took a deep breath. "We expand because we need room for our growing population. We fight wars to protect ourselves. And we follow our own laws, which work just fine for us." The crystal being's light flared brighter. "That is exactly the problem. You think only of yourselves? You do not care about the greater good of all species." Around the circle, other aliens nodded or made whatever gestures their species used to show agreement. Jake saw the spider-like arachnids clicking their mandibles, the floating gas bags of the ethereals pulsing with angry colors, and the stone-faced granite lords grinding their rocky features into frowns. "The council has reached a decision," the Zephyrian continued. "Humanity will submit to full galactic governance. You will place your military under our command. You will allow us to control your population growth. You will stop expanding into new systems without our permission. You will follow all galactic laws without question." Jake felt his heart sink. This was what he had been afraid of ever since the emergency session was called. "And if we refuse?" The Vari's energy form pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Then humanity will be declared an enemy of galactic civilization. All trade with your species will end. All travel to and from human space will be forbidden. You will be completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy." "You can't do that," Jake said, but even as he spoke he knew they could. The Galactic Council controlled the hyperspace lanes that allowed faster-than-light travel. They controlled the trading posts where species exchanged goods and technology. Without access to galactic civilization, humanity would be trapped in their small corner of space with no way to grow or learn. "We can and we will," the crystal being said. "You have 7 of your days to give us your answer. Choose wisely, Ambassador Martinez. The future of your entire species depends on this decision." The chamber began to fade around Jake as the transport beam activated. In seconds, he was standing on the deck of his ship, still feeling the weight of those alien eyes on him. His aide, a young woman named Carol Stevens, was waiting for him with a worried expression. "How did it go, sir?" she asked. Jake shook his head. "Get me a direct line to Earth. Priority 1. The President needs to hear this immediately." The journey back to Earth took 3 days, even using the fastest hyperspace routes. Jake spent the time writing his report and trying to figure out how to explain the situation to people who had never seen the true power of the Galactic Council. When his ship finally dropped out of hyperspace near Luna Station, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel, looking so peaceful and innocent that it was hard to believe the entire planet was about to face the biggest decision in human history. President Lisa Carter was waiting for him in the secure conference room beneath the Capitol building. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through anyone she looked at. Around the table sat the most important people in human government: Admiral Ryan Brooks from the Space Navy, General Kate Sullivan from the Global Defense Force, Dr. Alan Foster from the Science Council, and Maya Patel, the chief engineer who had helped design humanity's first faster-than-light ships. Jake told them everything. He described the alien ultimatum, the threats of isolation, and the 7-day deadline that was already ticking away. When he finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Admiral Brooks was the first to speak. "We can't fight them," he said. Quietly, "Our entire fleet wouldn't last 5 minutes against one of their battle groups. They have weapons that can crack planets in half." "But we can't just give up our freedom either," General Sullivan argued. "If we let them control our military and our expansion, we'll never be truly human again. We'll just be their pets." Dr. Foster leaned forward. "The isolation might not be as bad as they think. We've learned a lot from our contact with them." "Maybe we could survive on our own," Maya Patel shook her head. "Not for long. We need their technology, their trade routes, their knowledge. Without access to the galactic community, we'll fall behind and eventually die out." President Carter listened to all of them, her expression never changing. Finally, she turned to Jake. "What's your honest opinion, Ambassador? What do you think we should do?" Jake had been dreading this question for 3 days. "I think they're afraid of us," he said slowly. "They've been in control for so long that they don't know how to deal with a species that doesn't automatically bow down to them. They're not just trying to control us, they're trying to break our spirit." The president nodded. "Then we have our answer." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city beyond. Humanity didn't crawl out of caves and reach for the stars just to become slaves to a bunch of aliens who think they know better than us. We'll find our own way. Admiral Brooks looked worried. "Ma'am, with respect, this could mean war." "A war? We can't win." President Carter turned back to face them all. "Maybe we can't win a traditional war, but we're humans. We've never done anything the traditional way." She looked at Jake. "Send a message to the Council, Ambassador. Tell them that humanity appreciates their offer, but we'll have to decline. We prefer to make our own mistakes and find our own path among the stars." As Jake left the meeting to send the most important message in human history, he couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. The aliens had given humanity 7 days to choose between freedom and safety. Now that choice was made, and there was no going back. The warning came at 3 a.m, local time. Governor Tom Henderson was pulled from his sleep by the urgent beeping of his emergency communicator. He grabbed it with one hand while rubbing his eyes with the other, still trying to shake off the fog of sleep. "Sir, this is Command Center," came the voice of his aide. "We have multiple hyperspace signatures approaching the system. Big ones." Tom was fully awake now. He had been expecting this call ever since Earth's message reached New Virginia 2 days ago. The planet's 3 million colonists had been living on borrowed time since President Carter rejected the Council's ultimatum. "How long do we have?" he asked, already pulling on his clothes. "Sensors show they'll drop out of hyperspace in 6 hours. "Sir, there are at least 20 ships out there. Some of them are huge." Tom closed his eyes for a moment. New Virginia was a farming world, peaceful and green, with small towns scattered across 3 continents. The biggest weapons they had were hunting rifles and the old mining charges left over from when the first colonists cleared the land. Against the Galactic Council battle fleet, they might as well throw rocks. "Start the evacuation plan," he ordered. "Every ship we have, civilian or military. I want people off this planet and heading for the outer colonies. Move." By dawn, the spaceport was chaos. Families rushed to pack whatever they could carry, children crying as their parents explained that they had to leave their homes behind. The few military ships in orbit were loading refugees as fast as they could, but Tom knew they would never get everyone out in time. Commander Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the defense platform orbiting New Virginia, watching the evacuation. Ships stream away from the planet. She had 12 ships under her command, mostly converted cargo haulers with weapons bolted onto their hulls. Against the Council fleet, they were nothing more than speed bumps. "Ma'am," her sensor officer called out. "They're coming out of hyperspace now." The main screen lit up with contacts as the Council fleet appeared. Lisa counted 23 ships, including 4 massive dreadnoughts that were each bigger than her entire force combined. The lead ship was broadcasting on all frequencies. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. By order of the Council, this system is now under martial law. Surrender immediately. And prepare to be boarded." Lisa looked around at her crew. They were all young, most of them fresh out of the academy. They had joined the defense force to protect colonists from pirates and asteroid impacts, not to fight impossible wars against alien superpowers. But they were here, and they were all humanity had. "This is Commander Park of the New Virginia." "Defense Force," she replied. "We don't recognize the Council's authority over human space. You are ordered to leave immediately." There was a pause, then alien laughter that sounded like grinding metal. "Your resistance is noted and will be punished accordingly. All ships, commence bombardment." The first energy beams lanced down from orbit like spears of light. Where they touched the planet's surface, forests burst into flame and lakes boiled away into steam. The Council wasn't trying to capture New Virginia. They were trying to make an example of it. Lisa had seconds to make a decision that would affect everyone still on the planet. "All ships, attack pattern Delta. Use the cargo haulers as decoys and concentrate fire on their smallest escort ships." It was a desperate plan, but it was the only chance they had. The converted cargo ships spread out in all directions, broadcasting false sensor signatures to confuse the enemy targeting systems. Meanwhile, Lisa's 3 real warships dove straight at the Council formation. The aliens were caught off guard by the aggressive attack. They had expected the humans to either run away or surrender, not charge straight into a battle they couldn't win. 2 of their escort ships were badly damaged before they realized what was happening. "Direct hit on the lead escort," Lisa's weapons officer reported. "Their shields are down." "Pour everything we have into that ship," Lisa ordered. "Make them pay for every meter of space." The human attack lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Ship after ship was destroyed by the overwhelming alien firepower, but they kept fighting until the end. When Lisa's own ship finally took a critical hit and began to break apart, she had time for one last transmission. "All remaining ships, fall. Back to Rally Point 7. Take as many people as you can. Don't let them die for nothing." Down on the planet's surface, Dr. Amy Chen was working frantically in her laboratory, even as the alien bombardment grew closer. She was a xenotechnology specialist, one of the few humans who really understood how alien tech worked. The samples of Council technology that human intelligence had managed to gather over the years were scattered across her workbench. "Doctor, we need to go now," her assistant called from the doorway. "The last transport is leaving in 10 minutes. Amy didn't look up from her work. "Give me 5 more minutes. I think I've figured something out." She had been studying the wreckage of a Council probe that had been shot down near the border 6 months ago. The energy weapons that the aliens used seemed impossible by human physics. They shouldn't have been able to penetrate matter the way they did. But now, with the sound of destruction getting closer, she finally understood. "They're not using pure energy," she said to herself. "They're somehow converting matter directly into energy at the target site. That's why our armor doesn't work." It was a breakthrough that could change everything if she lived long enough to share it. Amy grabbed her data files and ran for the transport. The sound of approaching destruction chasing her every step on Haven's Gate, a heavily industrialized world with 10 million people. Director Carl Johnson was getting reports of what had happened at New Virginia. The planet had been evacuated, but at a terrible cost. Millions of refugees were scattered across human space with nowhere to go, and the Council had made their point clear: resistance would be met with overwhelming force. "Sir, we're detecting hyperspace disturbances," his aide reported. "Multiple ships inbound." Carl looked out at the orbital factories that surrounded Haven's Gate. This wasn't a farming world that could be evacuated in a few hours. This was the industrial heart of the outer colonies, with massive manufacturing complexes that had taken decades to build. Losing Haven's Gate would cripple humanity's ability to build ships and weapons. How long? He asked. 4 hours until they arrive. The fleet is even bigger than the one that hit New Virginia. Carl made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. We're not running. Send a message to every factory, every ship, every person on this planet. We're going to fight. Chief Engineer Ben Torres was already working on the planet's defenses when Carl's message arrived. He had Amy Chun's data from New Virginia, transmitted just before the planet fell, and he thought he understood what she had discovered. If he was right, there might be a way to stop the Council's superweapons. Reroute all power from the factories to the defensive grid, he ordered his team, and bring me every piece of alien technology we have in storage. We're going to try something that's either brilliant or completely insane. The modifications took 3 hours. By the time the Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace, Haven's Gate had been turned into a fortress. The orbital factories had been converted into weapon platforms, their industrial equipment jury-rigged into defensive systems that had never been tested. "This is Admiral Vexful of the Council Enforcement Fleet," came the transmission. "Haven's Gate will surrender immediately or face the same fate as New Virginia." Carl's response was broadcast on every frequency in the system. "This is Director Johnson of Haven's Gate. We've got a message for your council. Humans don't surrender. Come and take our world if you can." The battle that followed became legend. Ben's modified defenses actually worked, creating energy fields that disrupted the Council's matter conversion weapons. For the first time since the war began, human shields held against alien fire. The cost was enormous. Half the planet's surface was scorched and 2 of the 3 orbital factory complexes were destroyed. But when the smoke cleared, 3 Council capital ships were drifting dead in space, and the rest of their fleet was retreating. More importantly, humans had captured intact alien technology and several high-ranking prisoners. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven that the Council could bleed. On the frontier world of Red Rock, Sheriff Danny Cole watched the news reports with a growing sense of determination. His world was small and isolated, too far from the core systems for the Council to bother with immediately. But he knew they would come eventually. "Gather everyone in the town square," he told his deputy. "It's time to start getting ready." Danny had served in the Colonial Marines before becoming a sheriff. He knew how to fight, and more importantly, he knew how to teach others to fight. If the Council wanted Red Rock, they would have to pay for it in blood. As word of the resistance spread from world to world, something began to change in human space. The Council had expected their show of force to break human morale. Instead, it had done the opposite. Across 47 star systems, humans were preparing to fight for their freedom. The war that the Council thought would be over in days was just beginning. Agent Kelly Morgan sat in the darkest corner of the space station's bar, nursing a drink that tasted like liquid metal. The station was in neutral space, technically outside both human and Council territory, which made it the perfect place for meetings that officially never happened. She didn't look up when the massive figure approached her table. Korth were easy to spot even in a crowd. 8 feet tall, covered in scales that looked like armor, with teeth that could bite through steel. This one wore the elaborate headdress that marked him as royalty. "You are the human agent, Prince," Rosk said in heavily accented standard. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Depends who's asking," Kelly replied, still not looking at him directly. "And depends what kind of business they want to discuss." The Korth Prince sat down across from her, his massive bulk making the station furniture creak. "The kind of business that involves making the Council pay for 10,000 years of oppression." Now Kelly looked up. She had been hoping for this contact ever since human intelligence learned that several alien species were growing restless under Council rule. The Korth Empire had been one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy before the Council conquered them. They had technology, ships, and most importantly, they had reasons to hate their overlords. "What are you offering?" she asked. Rosk leaned forward. "Weapons, ships, intelligence about council movements. Everything we have been secretly building while pretending to be loyal subjects." "And what do you want in return?" "When this war is over, we want our freedom back. We want the council destroyed, not just beaten. And we want human support for Korth independence." Kelly considered this. It was exactly the kind of alliance that Earth's government had authorized her to pursue. But it was also extremely dangerous. If the council discovered that humans were coordinating with other rebellious species, the war would become much bigger and much deadlier. "I'll need to run this up the chain," she said finally. "But I think we can work something out." 3 days later, Dr. Gary Bell found himself working in a secret laboratory buried deep inside an asteroid. The facility had been built by the Korth over several decades, hidden from council sensors and stocked with technology that officially didn't exist. Gary was humanity's leading expert on alien weapons technology, but even he was amazed by what he found. The Korth had been secretly developing weapons that could punch through council shields, ships that could outrun council interceptors, and defensive systems that could hide entire fleets from enemy sensors. "How long have you been preparing for this?" he asked Korth engineer Prime Vexrak as they worked together to adapt the alien technology for human use. "Since the day the council conquered our homeworld," the massive alien replied. "We have never forgotten what freedom felt like." Their collaboration produced results faster than anyone had expected. Within weeks, Gary's team had developed new shield generators that could protect human ships from council energy weapons. They had improved human engines to make them competitive with alien technology. Most importantly, they had created weapons that could actually hurt council ships. The first test of the new technology came when Captain Nick Thompson led a joint task force against a council supply depot. Half his ships were human, half were Korth, all of them equipped with the new hybrid technology. "This is weird," Thompson's pilot commented as they approached the target. 6 months ago, these guys were shooting at us during border skirmishes. Now we're working together." "Enemy of my enemy," Thompson replied. "Plus, they really hate the council. And I mean really hate them. The attack was a complete success. The supply depot was destroyed. Several council ships were captured intact. And the joint force escaped without losses. More importantly, the operation proved that humans and aliens could work together effectively, but the victory came at a cost. Council retaliation was swift and brutal. Thompson's home colony was bombarded from orbit in response to his attack. The message was clear. Any collaboration with rebellious aliens would be punished severely. Ambassador Julie Ross was working from a hidden base when the news of the retaliation reached her. She had been tasked with reaching out to other alien species, looking for anyone who might be willing to help humanity. The Korth Alliance was just the beginning. "The Cylani Federation has agreed to meet with us," her aide reported. "They're offering humanitarian aid for human refugees?" Julie smiled. "The Cylani were traders, not warriors, but they controlled some of the most important commercial routes in the galaxy. Their support would be invaluable, even if they never fired a shot." The meeting took place on a Cylani merchant ship disguised as a routine cargo run. The aliens looked like tall, thin humans with pale blue skin and enormous eyes. They spoke in soft, musical voices that reminded Julie of wind chimes. "We cannot offer military assistance," Cylani Trade Minister Velener explained. "Our people are not warriors, but we can provide supplies, medical aid, and safe passage for your refugees." "That would be incredibly helpful," Julie replied. "But why are you willing to help us? The council must have threatened you with punishment." Solani's large eyes showed sadness. "Because we remember what it was like before the council. We were free to trade with anyone, to explore new markets, to grow and prosper. Now we must ask permission for everything. The galaxy has become a smaller place under their rule. The Cylani Alliance opened doors to other species. The insectoids Rix began refusing to attack human medical facilities. claiming that their cultural beliefs prevented them from harming healers. The aquatic Gelani withdrew their fleets entirely, saying they needed to defend their homeworld from unspecified threats. President Carter, now operating from a mobile command center that moved constantly to avoid council hunters, was amazed by the reports she was receiving. "How many species are involved now?" she asked General Paul Harris during their daily briefing. "Officially, just the Korth and Cylani," Harris replied. "Unofficially, we're getting help from at least 8 different species. Some of them are just providing intelligence, others are refusing to follow council orders. A few are actively sabotaging council operations." Grace Turner, humanity's new chief diplomatic coordinator, was equally optimistic. "We're not just fighting for human freedom anymore. This is becoming a galaxy-wide revolution." The turning point came when the council tried their most desperate weapon. Vivari, masters of telepathic manipulation, launched a coordinated mental attack against human colonies. The plan was to broadcast feelings of despair and hopelessness directly into human minds, breaking morale without firing a shot. Dr. Sandy Mitchell had been expecting something like this ever since the war began. She was a neurologist who specialized in studying how the human brain worked, and she had been developing defenses against telepathic attacks since first contact with alien species. "The human brain is different from most alien minds," she explained to her research team as they worked frantically to deploy their defenses. "We're naturally resistant to outside mental influence. That's probably why the Council is so afraid of us." The Vari attack failed completely. Not only did humans resist the telepathic assault, but Sandy's team was able to develop mental shields. That worked for other species too. Within days, the technology was being shared with the Korth, the Cylani, and every other species that wanted protection from mental manipulation. The failure of the telepathic attack sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time, other species realized that the Council's power was not absolute. If humans could resist the Vari's mental control, maybe other forms of resistance were possible too. Captain Mary Foster watched the intelligence reports with growing excitement. She commanded one of the new hybrid warships equipped with the best human and Korth technology. Her crew was mixed too, humans, Korth, and even a few Cylani who had volunteered to help with logistics. "Ma'am, we're getting reports of uprising on over 20 worlds," her intelligence officer reported. "Species that haven't defied the Council in thousands of years are starting to rebel." Mary smiled. "Then it's time to give them some support. Set course for the Rigel system. The crystalloids there have been sending us information about Council fleet movements. Time to return the favor." The war was changing. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival was becoming something much larger. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under Council rule for millennia were beginning to remember what freedom felt like. The Council still had more ships, more weapons, and more resources than all the rebels combined. But they were facing something they had never dealt with before, a galaxy-wide revolution led by a species that refused to give up. Dr. Rachel Bennett made her discovery while analyzing captured Council data files. She was a historian who specialized in ancient galactic civilizations, and something in the Council's own records didn't make sense. "These dates are wrong," she told her research team. "According to their own files, the Council has only been in power for 8,000 years, not 10,000 like they claim." Her team dug deeper into the data, following a trail of inconsistencies and deleted records. What they found changed everything. The current Galactic Council wasn't the original galactic government at all. They were conquerors who had destroyed the previous civilization and erased most records. Commander Luke Davis stood on the bridge of the Rebel flagship, watching the tactical display as ships from 6 different species formed up around him. 3 months ago, he had been captain of a single human destroyer. Now he commanded the largest Rebel fleet in galactic history. "Status report," he called out to his mixed crew. The bridge looked like something from a science fiction dream, with humans working alongside towering Korth warriors, graceful Cylani traders, and crystalline beings that communicated through light patterns. 43 ships ready for jump?" reported his Corps tactical officer. Intelligence confirms the Council supply convoy will be passing through the Vega system in 6 hours. Any Council reinforcements in the area? Luke asked. Negative, sir, replied his human sensor operator. The nearest Council fleet is 2 systems away. We should have plenty of time to hit the convoy and escape, Luke nodded. The rebellion had learned to fight smart, using hit-and-run tactics to wear down the Council's superior forces. Every captured supply ship meant weapons and technology for the growing rebel fleet. Every successful raid proved that the Council could be beaten. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump, he ordered. Today we show the galaxy that freedom isn't just for humans anymore. The fleet disappeared into hyperspace in a flash of blue light, leaving only empty space behind. Across the galaxy, similar fleets were launching similar attacks. The rebellion that had started with humanity's defiance had grown into a coordinated, military campaign spanning dozens of star systems. Dr. Rachel Bennett's discovery about the Council's true history had changed everything. The revelation that the current government was built on lies and genocide had sparked uprisings on worlds that had been peaceful for centuries. Species that had never questioned Council authority were suddenly demanding answers about their own histories. The crystalloids were among the first to openly rebel. Their silicon-based civilization had existed for millions of years, with perfect memory storage that went back to the beginning of their species. When they checked their archives against the Council's claims, they found massive gaps where records had been deleted or altered. The Council destroyed our first great city, Crystalloid Prime Zarvel announced during a broadcast that reached every rebel ship. They erased the memories of our golden age and told us we had always been primitive. We will not forgive this. The crystalloids brought more than just moral support to the rebellion. Their technology was some of the most advanced in the galaxy, especially their defensive systems. Rebel ships equipped with crystalloid shields could survive direct hits from Council. Superweapons, even more valuable, were the luminance, energy beings that existed as pure consciousness without physical bodies. They had been silent observers for thousands of years, watching the galaxy from within star systems and energy fields. Now they began sharing intelligence that no physical spy could have gathered. Council fleet movements, 3 days in advance, reported Intelligence Officer Sarah Kim during the daily briefing. Planned attacks on rebel colonies, locations of secret weapons factories, even internal Council communications. The luminance can be anywhere energy exists, which means they can be everywhere. Captain Mary Foster was leading her mixed crew on increasingly bold missions. Her ship had been refitted with technology from 4 different species, making it one of the most advanced vessels in known space. Today's mission was their most dangerous yet. Target confirmed, her Cylani navigator announced. Council research station heavily defended, but the intelligence says they're developing planet-killer weapons. Mary felt a chill. The Council had already used planet killers against 2 rebellious worlds, turning thriving civilizations into balls of molten rock. If they were building more of these weapons, the rebellion needed to stop them. Any other ships in the area? She asked. Negative, we're on our own for this one. Mary looked around at her crew. Humans, Korth, Cylani, even a crystalloid engineer, whose crystal body glowed with inner light. 6 months ago, most of these species had been enemies or strangers. Now they were family, united by their desire for freedom. All right, people, she said. Let's go steal ourselves a planet killer. The attack was everything a desperate raid should be: fast, brutal, and barely successful. Mary's ship took heavy damage fighting through the station's defenses, but they managed to capture the massive weapon before Council reinforcements arrived. Ma'am, her weapons officer reported as they limped away from the battle, this thing could destroy an entire star system. How were they planning to use it? Probably against Earth, Mary replied grimly, or any other world that refuses to surrender. The captured planet killer became a symbol of the rebellion's growing power. More importantly, it provided the rebels with their own superweapon. Evening the odds against the Council's superior fleet, Senator Frank Miller was working from a hidden base on the edge of known space, coordinating the political side of the rebellion. The military campaigns were important, but the real war was being fought in the hearts and minds of billions of sentient beings across the galaxy. "Status report on the liberated systems," he called out to his staff. 37 systems have declared independence from the Council, his aide reported. 15 more are in open rebellion. The Galactic Freedom Coalition now controls more territory than any single Council member species. Frank smiled. The coalition had started as a desperate alliance between humans and a few rebel species. Now it was becoming a real government, providing humanitarian aid and coordinating defense efforts across liberated space. "What about the refugee situation?" he asked. "Difficult but manageable. The Cylani merchant fleet is transporting displaced civilians to safe worlds. The crystalloids are providing temporary housing. Even some Council species are secretly sending aid. The refugee crisis was one of the war's hidden tragedies. Millions of beings had been forced to flee their homes as fighting spread across the galaxy, but it was also proof that the rebellion was about more than just military victory. It was about building something better to replace the Council's oppressive rule. The Council's response to the growing rebellion was increasingly desperate. Ancient automated defense systems that had been dormant for millennia were activated, turning entire star systems into death traps. Weapons that had been banned even by the Council's own laws were deployed against rebel worlds. The worst attack came against the Korth homeworld. Prince Rosk was leading the defense when the Council fleet arrived with orders to make an example that would terrify other rebellious species. "They're not trying to capture the planet," Rosk reported to the Rebel Command Center. "They're trying to kill everyone on it." The bombardment lasted for days. Ancient Korth cities that had stood for thousands of years were reduced to rubble. Millions of civilians died in the attacks, including most of the Korth royal family, but the brutality backfired. Instead of breaking rebel morale, it convinced fence-sitting species that the Council was willing to commit genocide to maintain power. Systems that had been neutral suddenly declared for the rebellion. Even some Council species began questioning whether their government had become the very evil it claimed to fight. Captain Joe Parker found himself leading peacekeeping forces in the liberated systems, trying to maintain order as the old galactic structure collapsed. It was a difficult job. Different species had different ideas about law and justice, and some groups were using the chaos to settle old scores. "Report from the Antares system," his aide announced. "Local warlords are trying to take control of the mining colonies. The planetary government is requesting assistance." Joe sighed. Military victory against the Council was only the first step. Building a new galactic order that actually worked would be much harder. "Send the 3rd Squadron," he ordered, "and make sure they understand we're there to protect civilians, not to choose sides in local politics." Helen Wright was coordinating humanitarian efforts from a converted space station that had become the rebellion's unofficial capital. She had been a disaster relief coordinator before the war, but nothing had prepared her for managing aid efforts across dozens of star systems. "Food supplies are running low in the Proxima colonies," her assistant reported. "The Council destroyed their agricultural facilities before retreating." "What about medical supplies for the Rigel refugees?" Helen asked. "The Cylani merchants are bringing another shipment next week. The crystalloids have also offered to share their healing technology." Helen looked at the massive display showing refugee movements across rebel space. Red dots showed overcrowded camps. Yellow indicated worlds struggling to provide basic services. Green marked successful resettlement efforts. "There was too much red and yellow, not enough green. We need more ships," she said. "And more planets willing to take refugees. This war is creating more homeless people than we can handle." The humanitarian crisis was straining the rebellion's resources, but it was also creating unexpected bonds between species. Human children were learning Korth battle songs. Cylani merchants were teaching refugees how to navigate hyperspace trade routes. And crystalloid engineers were working with human scientists to develop new technologies. Dr. Kevin O'Brien was at the center of these scientific exchanges. His research station brought together the best minds from all Rebel. The Battle of Citadel Station began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time, with the largest space fleet in recorded history emerging from hyperspace around the Council's ultimate stronghold. Admiral Susan Taylor watched from her flagship as nearly 1,000 Rebel ships spread out in attack formation, their hulls gleaming with the colors and markings of a dozen different species. "All ships report ready for battle," her communications officer announced. "The Korth heavy cruisers are taking point, with human destroyers providing escort. Crystalloid ships are moving to flank positions." Susan nodded, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Everything the rebellion had fought for came down to this moment. If they failed here, the dream of galactic freedom would die with them. "This is Admiral Taylor to all ships," she broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. "Today we don't just fight for our own freedom. We fight for every being in this galaxy who dreams of a better tomorrow. The Council has ruled through fear for too long. Let's show them what courage can accomplish." The Council's response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy beams lanced out from the massive station's weapons platforms, each one powerful enough to destroy a city. Automated defense drones swarmed out of hidden bays like angry insects, their weapons already firing at the approaching Rebel fleet, but the Rebels had advantages the Council hadn't expected. Dr. Bob Andrews' discovery of the ancient programming protocols was already paying off. As the battle raged, key defense systems began shutting down or turning against their Council operators. "Ma'am, the Southern Defense Grid just went offline," Susan's tactical officer reported. "Our Luminant allies report they've managed to infiltrate the station's computer network." "All ships, concentrate fire on the southern approach," Susan ordered. "General Robinson, your landing craft are clear to begin the assault." General Mike Robinson watched from his command ship as transport after transport launched toward the massive station. His assault force was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, humans and aliens fighting side by side, united by their shared desire for freedom. "First wave is away," his aide reported. "Korth shock troops are leading the assault on Docking Bay 7. Human Marines are targeting the command center. Crystalloid engineers are moving to secure the power core." The fighting inside Citadel Station was brutal and close quarters, with Rebel forces having to fight through corridors that had been designed to channel attackers into killing zones. But the diverse nature of the assault force worked in their favor. Korth warriors could smash through barriers that would stop human soldiers, while human agility allowed them to reach places the larger aliens couldn't access. Captain Steve Williams led a mixed squad of Marines through the station's central core, heading for the Council chambers where the galaxy's rulers were making their final stand. His team included humans, reformed Council soldiers who had switched sides, and even a few Vari who had rejected their species' telepathic manipulation. "Resistance is getting heavier," reported Sergeant Lisa Murphy as they fought through another checkpoint. "But the ancient defense systems are definitely helping us. Half the doors are opening automatically, and some of the automated guns are targeting Council forces instead of us." The breakthrough came when Crystalloid engineers managed to reach the station's primary computer core. Their silicon-based minds could interface directly with the ancient systems, awakening programming that had been dormant for thousands of years. "The original builders were called the Architects," reported Chief Engineer Crystal Mind Bright with purpose. "They created this station as a center of learning and cooperation, not domination. The current Council perverted their vision. As more ancient systems came online, the tide of battle shifted decisively. Weapons that had been pointed outward to defend the station began turning inward, targeting Council strongpoints. Blast doors that should have protected the rulers instead trapped them in their chambers. The final assault on the Council chambers was led by Captain Williams and a joint force of humans and aliens. They fought through corridors lined with the statues of ancient conquerors, past murals depicting the Council's version of galactic history. "Remember," Williams told his troops as they prepared to breach the final door, "we're here to arrest them, not execute them. The new galaxy will be built on justice, not revenge." The 12 members of the Galactic Council were waiting in their massive chamber, some still trying to coordinate a defense while others seemed resigned to their fate. The crystal being that had spoken to Ambassador Martinez so long ago stood in the center, its faceted surface dim with defeat. "You have won," it said as rebel forces surrounded them. "But ruling a galaxy is more difficult than conquering one. You will learn that soon enough." President Carter, who had flown in personally for this moment, stepped forward. "We're not here to rule anyone. We're here to make sure no one can rule everyone ever again." The surrender of the Council marked the end of the largest space battle in galactic history, but it was only the beginning of the harder work of building peace. With Council authority collapsed, power vacuums opened across the galaxy as local warlords and criminal organizations tried to seize control of abandoned territories. Captain Joe Parker found himself leading peacekeeping forces across dozens of systems, trying to maintain order while the new government took shape. It was exhausting work that required diplomacy as much as military skill. "Report from the Vega colonies," his aide announced during their daily briefing. "Local pirates tried to take control of the mining stations. Our intervention force restored order, but the colonists are requesting permanent protection." "What about the situation in the Rigel system?" Joe asked. "More complicated. 3 different factions are claiming authority, and they're all asking for our support. Plus, there are reports of Council loyalists trying to organize a counter-revolution." Joe rubbed his tired eyes. Fighting the Council had been simple compared to this. Send diplomatic teams to all 3 factions. Make it clear that we support whoever can maintain peace and protect civilian rights. As for the Council loyalists, track them down, but treat them fairly when you capture them. Meanwhile, the work of creating new galactic institutions was proceeding on multiple fronts. The Galactic Freedom Coalition, which had started as a military alliance, was evolving into something like a real government. But it was a government, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. "We're not trying to recreate the Council," explained President Carter during a broadcast to the entire galaxy. "We're building something new, a confederation, where each species maintains its autonomy while cooperating on matters of mutual interest." Dr. Kevin O'Brien was at the center of the effort to create new scientific institutions. His research stations were bringing together minds from across the galaxy, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded by the Council for millennia. "The medical breakthroughs alone are incredible," he told a gathering of scientists from 20 different species. "We've developed treatments for diseases that have plagued entire civilizations. We've created technologies that can terraform dead worlds. We've even found ways to help species that were considered biologically incompatible to work together." The collaborative research was producing wonders that seemed almost magical. Ships that could travel between stars in days instead of weeks. Healing technologies that worked across radically different biologies. Communication systems that could translate not just language, but concepts between species with completely different ways of thinking. The former Council species faced difficult choices about their futures. Some, like the Zephyrians, withdrew to their homeworlds and refused to participate in the new galactic order. Others, like the Vari, began the painful process of learning to interact with other species without using mental manipulation. "We must relearn what it means to be ourselves," admitted Vari leader Velion during a meeting with human negotiators. "For so long, we defined ourselves by our power over others. Now we must find our own identity," the Granite Lords, whose stone-like appearance had made them seem unchanging and eternal, surprised everyone by embracing reform more enthusiastically than any other former Council species. "Stone may seem permanent, but even mountains can be worn down and reshaped," their leader explained. "Perhaps it is time for us to become something new." The rebuilding efforts weren't limited to politics and science. Across the galaxy, worlds that had been damaged by war were being restored with the help of technologies from multiple species. Haven's Gate, the first world to successfully resist Council attack, became a symbol of renewal. Mayor Carol Davis oversaw the planet's reconstruction, which incorporated architectural styles and technologies from dozens of different civilizations. "We're not just rebuilding what was destroyed," she explained to visitors. We're creating something that represents the new galaxy, diverse, cooperative, and beautiful. The refugee crisis that had seemed overwhelming during the war was gradually being resolved as displaced populations found new homes across liberated space. The Cylani merchant fleet continued to provide transportation, while planets across the galaxy opened their doors to beings fleeing the chaos of war. On the frontier world of Red Rock, Sheriff Danny Cole found his small town becoming home to refugees from half a dozen different species.